Guys in the survival suits start slapping the guy without a survival suit to keep him awake because he is so close to death. When somebody says duck on the deck, you duck. Like you just duck. There's no reason, there's no question. You don't look around and go, why? You just hit the deck because something is going to kill you. And all of a sudden, there's more fish in the boat, and there's more fish in the boat. And I look around, and the fish are just like literally jumping out of the water into the rubber raft. And I'm like, no, I only want one. The amount of things you can learn by seeing things from other people's perspective, and reading itself is like an exercise in empathy. It's like you have to be the person. Their voices are in your head.
Hello, and welcome to the Brent and Peck podcast. Today, I'm joined by Lane Schmelzenbach, and he's been a commercial fisherman, so we're going to dive in and explore some of that, as well as some of his interests in reading. Thanks for coming on.
It's great to be here. It's nice to be here.
Yeah. So I'm most curious, what got you into commercial fishing?
It was not by choice. I was a kid and my dad was a commercial fisherman, and it was just kind of an assumed thing, it's the family business. And man, early memories of working with and climbing on and playing with fishing gear. It was just something that our whole family did since I was born, really. So I grew up in Kodiak, Alaska. So that's the largest fishing hub in the world, or at least it was for a while. So the fishing industry is huge there. They have the largest Coast Guard base in the world because of that, and also because of, the war in World War II. They built a big base there. Yeah, so my first commercial fishing season officially, I think I was 10 years old, so pretty young. And my job was to push salmon into the fish hold.
Nice.
Yeah.
So did you guys primarily do salmon or other fish as well?
Mostly salmon to start with, because it's a short season. And my dad eventually bought another boat that we did halibut fishing with. And we did do some herring seining. Eventually, we got a permit to seine for salmon around Kodiak. So we fished for salmon all around Kodiak Island, but most of the fishing I did over the last 30 plus years was out of Bristol Bay, Alaska, and it was for sockeye salmon.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people aren't familiar with commercial fishing. Maybe the closest they've come is the show, is it Deadliest Catch or something?
Yeah, Deadliest Catch. So those boats on Deadliest Catch, I've been on a lot of them because the off season of crabbing, in order to keep the boats busy, because they cost a lot to maintain, they become fishing transporters. And so Bristol Bay is a tiny little delta with shallow water. You can't get in there with a big boat. So the big boat would anchor up outside. The little boats would catch the fish in the delta and then unload onto the big boat. And we would give them fish, and they would give us food, fuel, and water, and showers, because the boat was small. We didn't have showers.
So did you do some of the deep sea fishing, or were you mostly in the bay?
So we had two boats, and there was the river fishery, which was a small 32-foot aluminum boat. We had two of them. The first one was called the Aaron Leanne, and the second one was called the Cat's Paw. And we did that fishery from when I was 10 to about 2 years ago. So this last summer was the second summer I had spent on dry land since I was 10. But my dad bought this other boat for deep sea fishing. We did a halibut fishing, which you use a long line for that. So the two fisheries, you have Gillnet, which is for shallow water fishing, and you set it, and there's a cork line and a lead line, and it's a wall of web mesh. The fish get tangled in it, and you pick the fish out. And your primary job on a gillnetter is picking fish and throwing them in the fish hold. Longlining, you bait individual hooks with a Circle J hook, and then you lay out miles and miles of line with hooks and bait, and then you pull it back in and take the halibut off one by one. So that you do way offshore. So we needed a bigger boat that was a lot more seaworthy. The little aluminum boat wasn't very seaworthy, but our seiner was much more designed for that. And we had a lot of halibut trips growing up that I remember.
Nice. So when you're dropping those miles of lines, is it like the closest analogy I have is like trolling on a lake? Like, are you moving the boat, or is it just a drop and you just sit there?
So you have a long line wrapped on a giant reel, and it's, I don't know, 15 or 20 miles long. And then you have tubs of baited hooks with clips and short ganyons on them. So then as the line is set, you clip on a baited hook as it goes out. And then in between every 50 or 60 hooks, you put a weight or an anchor on. So it sinks down to the bottom of the ocean. Usually you're fishing in about 30 fathoms, sometimes deeper, sometimes shallower. And then you put a buoy on both ends and you let it sit for 3 hours, and you come back and you pick it up from one end, and hopefully there's a fish on every hook, and hopefully it's the right size, but it isn't always.
So it's not a long line that's like attached to the boat. You drop it, you have the buoys.
Buoys at both ends, and you leave it there so you can set another long line out. Okay. You actually cut the line so you can put a buoy and an anchor on each end, and then you go make another string. We call them strings. So you set like 4 strings out, and then you go back to the first string and start picking it up. And then by the time you're done picking that one up, the other ones are ready. So it's timing. And when we started, it was derby style fishing, which was horrible. So derby style fishing means that Fish and Game sets a 24-hour period months in advance and says all fishing for halibut has to be done on this day for 24 hours. And everybody goes out to their secret spots, and it's a derby. It's like the gun goes off, everybody sets their gear, picks it up, and see how much halibut they can catch in 24 hours. And there's planes flying around, and enforcement's trying to make sure nobody cheats. And the problem with that was super dangerous because the weather is bad around Kodiak Island. And when you set the dates that far in advance, people would go out in storms to try and make money. They had to. Their livelihood depended on it. And so they would go out in big storms, and there would be a lot of bad things happen.
So how'd they solve for that? Like, what do you do instead of a derby?
Well, they had one particularly bad year. In fact, one of those years, I was, where was I that? I skipped this particular derby for some reason. I think I was in Africa. But that was the season that my brother was on the boat with my dad, and they had a crew, and they started seeing debris in the water, and it was really rough. So the waves are kind of crashing, and they're trying to get the gear on board, and they start seeing debris. And then my brother was the one who saw it. He looks over, and way off in the distance between the waves, he sees somebody standing in the water, which is strange. You're so far offshore, you can't see land. Like, you are really far offshore. And so they put a buoy on the gear and raced over there. And it turns out there was 5 people on a gutting table floating in the ocean. And the one guy who was standing up had a survival suit on, but at his feet was 2 ladies in survival suits, and then one other gentleman in a survival suit, but there was one guy with no survival suit on. And hypothermia sets in at about 10 minutes in that temperature water, and they'd been in the water for 2.5 hours or something like that.
Goodness.
And my brother tells a story, and he's like, he just remembers as they approached, and the people on the table realized they were going to be rescued. They thought they were going to die. The guy had been waving for like hours to try and get our attention, and we just couldn't see. It was too dark, it was too rough. And so when we finally went over there, you could see they got so excited. But one of the guys in the survival suits starts slapping the guy without a survival suit to keep him awake, because he is so close to death that they think he's going to die. And my brother's like, it was so weird to come upon this and see this guy smashing this other guy in the face and yelling at him. Like, it was like, we're going to get saved now. Don't die now.
Yeah.
So they pulled all of these people out of the water. Their boat had sank so fast that the one guy couldn't get his survival suit out. And the other people had put their survival suits on in the water, which meant that they were shocked in the cold before they got their survival suits on. So all of them had hypothermia pretty bad. And, it was just this trying to keep them alive, trying to keep them warm, especially the gentleman who had really severe hypothermia. And then, you put them all in the cabin, you turn the stove on high, wrap them in blankets, call the Coast Guard. Coast Guard flies in with a helicopter, lowers a basket in this terrible storm, and loaded them up into the basket and flew them to the hospital. Then they went back and picked up the gear.
Did the guys all make it?
Yeah, everybody survived, which was miraculous, really. That was the same year that they have in Kodiak at the harbor like a memorial bell, and there's a service every year where they remember fishermen who lost their lives that year. And that was a year where we went to that memorial service, and they rang the bell like 60 times or something like that.
Goodness.
They had lost so many lives. And so much of it was because the danger of forcing people to fish regardless of the weather is just sketchy. So you asked earlier about the solution. I think they started this in Australia actually, but it's a management strategy. Whenever there's nature and humans, that border, you have to have management. People don't really understand that. They're like, no, just let nature take its course. I'm like, no, you can't do that. The management practice they use is called quotas. And basically they looked at the past history of how many halibut everyone had caught. And they said, okay, your average season is this much. You get this much quota. You can catch it anytime you want, but that's as much as you can catch. And that quota grows and shrinks depending on what the biologists want. So they're like, ooh, we're getting worried about the amount of halibut available in our test fisheries. Halibut is down, so your quota is going to shrink from 20,000 pounds to 15,000 pounds. And then you catch 15,000 pounds and sell it to the cannery and register it with the state, and it worked great. And we fished halibut quota for, I think until 2006 is when my dad finally sold out of the halibut quota. But yeah, a lot of halibut fishing, a lot of halibut trips. And they were more exciting than you'd ever want them to be. Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out how that works if it's by weight. Because if there's a lot of younger, smaller fish, you're wiping out a whole lot more fish than catching a couple big ones. Like, how are they managing
so
that?
many laws. There's like all kinds of laws. So my brother was lots faster at gutting halibut than I was. So he would be the guy on the gutting bench and he would clean the fish. You have to, basically our operation, we didn't have refrigeration on board. So the fish hold is filled with ice. And he would gut the halibut and put ice inside of them where the guts were. And then we'd put them on ice. And it worked great. Keeps them super fresh. My job was running the rail. And so the long line is being wound up on the boat. And I have a big metal hook in my hand, a gaff. And my job was to see the halibut as it came up and either yell that I needed help if it's a big one, because we caught some 300 pounders. I mean, these fish are enormous sometimes. Most of the time you're hoping for like 50 pounders because they're easy to gut, easy to handle. The big ones are exciting, but you catch like 2 or 3 150-pound halibut in a row and you are super tired and you got to do this for hours on end. So my job was the long line comes up, I gaff the halibut, unsnap the hook, and then I set it down on the deck where there was a ruler. And they have to be at least 2 feet in length or you throw them back. You pop out the hook carefully. It doesn't do any damage usually to their mouth. They got tough mouth. And so you just pop the hook out, throw them back over, and the babies would go back to grow into big juicy halibut later. And then the big ones would be the ones you kept.
Nice. So you didn't want the big ones because it'd wear you out too fast.
Yeah, and the big ones don't taste as good. And oh man, I love halibut so much. So it's really strange. At the time, the canneries would pay extra money for bigger fish for some reason. I think it's just because there was more sellable meat. But every fisherman knew that a 50-pound halibut tastes so much better than a 150-pound halibut. The meat's just so much better and delicious and soft and wonderful. Whereas a big halibut, especially like a really big halibut, tough and dry and old, no good.
Yeah. I have to say, I don't have a lot of fishing experience, but my favorite fishing and best tasting fish was rainbow trout out of the Nisqually River in Washington. Interesting. And it's like I've had pond rainbow trout, I've had out of other rivers, but the Nisqually is glacier fed.
It all matters what they're eating.
And it has fast moving water, so they're constantly moving more. And it's like that was just the best tasting trout I've ever had.
That's awesome. And I think that applies to halibut and to salmon too, is that actually the smaller halibut eat different food than the bigger halibut. Those big halibut can eat anything. Like you're gutting a big halibut and it's literally got halibut that you could sell for money in its stomach. I mean, it eats everything. They're just monsters. And the little ones have to eat stuff that makes their meat taste better, maybe. And, red salmon, the reason it's red is because they eat a certain diet of microorganism that's very red, and it just makes for such a delicious fish, as opposed to pink salmon, which is the worst. The difference is the price of red salmon is like $2 a pound. The price of pink salmon is like $0.05 a pound. So there's a big difference in flavor there.
I love fish, but my wife does not like a lot of it. I've tried to convince her, like other people I've known that can't stand the taste of fish, try fresh tuna. Like it doesn't have some of that same fish flavor. So I'm curious like what the dietary differences are that they would be so wildly different like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I love tuna. I love sushi in general. Canned tuna, grew up on it, but there's no tuna in Alaska that we ever caught. So I don't actually know much about tuna except they're huge and beautiful and man, they're good. I think as fish grow, they're almost guaranteed to become predatory. So I think like king salmon is delicious, but the problem with king salmon is there's so few of them because they're top of the food chain. There can't be very many because they have to have enough prey.
Yeah. I'm curious how steelhead compare, because when I was in Washington, the Nisqually was a huge steelhead run too.
Yeah, I like steelhead, but again, it matters on where it's from. I've had some terrible steelhead, but I've had some delicious steelhead, and same with rainbow trout. There's some lake trout that it just tastes so good, and I like it, and then there's other. I'm like, this is mushy and tasteless and gross. Yes. I'm kind of a fish snob, though, so hard to please.
I think my favorite of all the fish that I've had is a good rainbow trout, but it has like maybe it's the one thing I'm snobbish about, but I like the river trout. I don't like the lake trout.
I agree with you. The moving water, I don't know, it just tastes better. I have to say that rainbow trout eat salmon fry, and so as a commercial fisherman, I'm supposed to hate them with all of my being because a single rainbow trout can kill millions of future salmon because they eat the spawn and the eggs. And so, yeah, we're not supposed to like rainbow trout.
Isn't that like the number one stocked fish is rainbow trout?
Yeah. It's not good for salmon spawning, apparently. Although my biology could be off. I don't know.
I'm curious, over the years, I've heard you tell some crazy stories about some of the trips. Like you look at some of the TV shows and they show, of course, just the drama. What's been the hardest waves that are hitting the ship where everything's just falling apart? Like, did you have those experiences or was it just a lot more hard work in general, but fairly smooth?
It is interesting that Deadliest Catch became kind of such a phenomenon because it really does give people a great inside view of being on a crab boat. They manufacture quite a bit of the drama. And I feel like, so in Bristol Bay where I fished for, 35 years or whatever, they tried to make a reality TV show like Deadliest Catch. And they made one season of it. And the boat that they put it on was called Thunder. And, their first season they made, they didn't pay anybody. The way these reality TV shows work a lot of times is they don't pay anybody. They make a season, and if people like it, then they'll come back and pay people. But nobody liked it because it was really boring. And so much of the drama was like obviously manufactured. Like, oh no, somebody didn't wash the dishes. This is an outrage. And it's like, no. So yeah, it's much safer and much less exciting than crabbing is, basically because you're in a small boat in a river delta. So yeah, the weather gets bad, and we would anchor up in storms all the time, but there's so many people so close by that, oh no, my boat is sinking. You just go out on deck and wave your arms, and somebody comes over and you come on their boat. I mean, it's just like it's a river delta that has 600 fishermen fishing boats in it. There are so many boats that you can't help bumping into each other. It's
Goodness.
Like in the anchorage when you're out fishing, there's plenty of space, but much safer and more, because it's a short season. I'm going to say it's not easier, but more regimented. In other words, the biologists decide when you fish and when you don't fish, and they try and keep the openings similar to the tides. So when they're trying to let fish up the river, that's called escapement. They're investing in the future run in 3 years. They'll be like, okay, everybody can fish today at noon for 3 hours, and that's it. And so you get up and you make a big breakfast, and you play cards, and you watch a movie, then you go work for 3 hours, you clean the boat, then you watch some more movies and go to bed. And that's easy. But then once they get their escapement, it turns into, okay, you're going to get up at midnight and work for 10 hours. And then when that's done, at noon the next day, you're going to work for 10 hours again. So think about that. That means that you have 2 hours where you're not working, where you have to clean the boat and deliver the fish. So really, you're working 24 hours a day when they do that. And that was the way the season would always kind of finish out, is these huge, long days where somebody would have to sleep eventually. And one guy would sleep for 4 hours and then trade out. Another guy would sleep for 4 hours. You're just working. So it's very hard work.
Just endless.
Yeah. It was.
How long
really
does that
slog.
go on for? Is that just like a couple days?
Usually 10 days, maybe 2 weeks of 24/7 work. And then you just can't take it anymore. Like there's a limit. Like, yeah, we're not making that much money now. The fish have kind of mostly gone by. So are we really going to, work 24 hours so we can catch 1,500 pounds of fish? No, we're not. We're going to be like, time for a nap and go sleep. But when the fish are running, and you can catch, 5,000 pounds, you need to be out there scratching up your season. I mean, that's a big part. During the peak of the season, they're usually only 7 or 8 hour openers. And a lot of times you have to deliver multiple times because the boat packs about 20,000 pounds, and you fill the boat up. You got to go deliver it, and then you go back out again and hopefully get more. And that's when you really add up your season, is when the peak is at its peak. When I was a kid, people don't really understand how much fish we're talking about here. There's like 36 million salmon going up this river in just a period of 2 weeks with, it's a big hump, right? So it starts off real slow, and then more fish, and then at the peak there's so many fish going up. So we have memories of just looking out into the water, and as far as the eye can see, jumpers are in the air. Literally you are seeing 10,000 fish all jumping at once. There's just it's phenomenal to see. It doesn't happen very often, but when it did, it was phenomenal to see. When I was a kid once, and I'm pretty sure this is illegal, so I probably shouldn't be recording it, but it was the 80s, so it was okay. I got in a rubber raft during the peak, and they'd closed. It was closed, so no fishing allowed. Everybody's anchored up. We're anchored up in the river, and this huge school of red salmon are sweeping in. And so we had this little rubber raft, and I think I was 12 years old, and I had a dip net. And my dad's like, hey, I want you to go over there in the shallow water and dip net us a fish to eat for dinner. And I was like, yes, I'm going to do that. So I row over into the shallow water, and I can hear the salmon hitting the side of the rubber raft. And I like stick my dip net down in there, and I pull it up, and there's like 5 salmon in it. So I'm like, oh, this is too many salmon. I just want one. So I dump them into the boat, and I start throwing the other ones out. And all of a sudden, there's more fish in the boat, and there's more fish in the boat. And I look around, and the fish are just like literally jumping out of the water into the rubber raft. And I'm like, no, I only want one. I only want one. So that was the kind of stuff that I remember as a kid. These incredible schools of fish all going up the river. It was amazing to see, and the beauty of the environment there, the way the Igigik River that we were fishing on is just gorgeous place, and so like removed from the rest of the world. Is a great place to work every summer.
Nice. You talk about those numbers of fish, and what comes to mind is you see news stories or other stuff pop up, and it's like, we've depleted the fish in the ocean down to what, like 1 or 2% of what they were, like, and then you hear those numbers, and it's like,
it's interesting. So fisheries around the world are really suffering, lots of them. And there's a lot of worries in Alaska too. There's quite a few fisheries that are down. Bristol Bay has been known as the best managed fishery in the world. The numbers of fish that are going up that river are actually not natural. Like if nature were just to run its course, there would be far, far less in the run. And the reason is because what's happening is the usual cycle is the fish population goes up, and then there's too many and there's not enough food, and they all die. And when they all die, the river, like, there's no run for a couple years, and then slowly it comes back. And that's the way it was before management stepped in, and they had all these biologists figure out the exact number of salmon that the river could support, and then they aim for that every year. And it's to the point of that, like, they will go up and dynamite spawning beds to kill salmon, because they know that if too many get up, it'll ruin the run. So they've got this like target, and they've kind of artificially managed the maximum number of fish that can survive on this river, which is crazy in and of itself. I mean, it's such an incredible resource that they've kind of created in a lot of ways. But there's different theories. Like, there's theories about the temperature of the water, the average temperature of the ocean water is changing. And some people think that the red salmon in Bristol Bay have a huge advantage in that Bristol Bay has access to the Bering Sea. So these fish can actually migrate with the temperature of the water. Whereas fish like down in the lower 48 or on the East Coast, there's not nearly as much access to colder water and uninhabitable rivers. So that's one thing about Bristol Bay is these rivers are huge, and there is no civilization associated with any of them. The tundra is so vast, and there is no pollution, there's no people, there's no interest in that area for like urban living. But you take the coast of California, I mean, just anywhere in the lower 48, you've got to have dams for electricity and all these other things and competing things that have really hurt the fisheries down here. Overfishing has been a true problem around the world, but because Bristol Bay and Alaska kind of was later in the game, I feel like they benefited from knowing that overfishing could happen easily, and that the state of Alaska put a lot of money into managing their fisheries to protect them, and it's worked out amazingly well. So that's been a good thing, and hopefully it will continue. But one of the things that our family worried about over the years was, when is it our turn? We would have, we'd have a season where we'd make a record amount of money, and then the next year nobody would catch anything, and the biologists. You'd say, hey, wasn't there supposed to be 36 million fish this year? And they'd be like, well, we got 20 million. We don't know what happened to the other 13 million. They just didn't show up. And so then there would be all these rumors like, it was the Japanese. Oh, no, it was the Russians. They came over and caught all our fish in the Pacific. But nobody knows. And you're just like, well, what happened? Up and down, feast or famine. A lot of parallels to farming, because the price matters, the weather matters, the equipment matters. But
yeah.
Is a fascinating and wonderful industry to be a part of.
The closest I've come to anything is a couple of the local trout hatcheries, like going and experiencing those, which I know is just abysmally unrepresentative.
I worked at a hatchery for a while in Kodiak, and it was an experience. Yeah, a lot of fish experience, I guess, in my life.
All the dad jokes are trying to come out. All the things your wife can say. I knew there was something fishy about you.
Yeah. I have a Popeye walk, and people would make fun of me, but it's because I grow up on a boat. You got to walk with a low center of gravity. Yeah.
So did you, other than that one storm where you guys found the one boat that went down, like, did you have other major troubling times?
So if you wanted to hear like bad weather stories, I could go on and on. I mean, it's just part of the work. It's like every season you're like, okay, what's going to happen this season? And you plan and you hope, and usually everything turns out good.
But there's always the chance of something.
There's always the chance. It's amazing how I feel like most people are not really aware of what Mother Nature is like, because we live in suburbia, and it takes, like, I don't know, you get stuck in the blues in a snowstorm and you're like, wow, nature is dangerous. But we've been in some pretty serious weather before and taken some huge waves, and there's like various stages of danger. Bristol Bay is notoriously not really that dangerous. Like, the number of people die in the fishery every year is so close to zero that it's miraculous. And usually the fatalities are accident related because it's heavy equipment. So it's very rare that a big storm sweeps in and a boat sinks and people are lost. That is very rare. What's more rare is getting hit by a tow line, or getting caught in the reel, or getting pulled overboard in the net. I mean, those kinds of things are really dangerous.
That's the first thing that came to my mind is you see some of, I mean, it's more like military ships, but you'll see some of the videos of them releasing the anchor and just that chain. Like, I don't want to be anywhere near that.
Yeah. So we woke up in the night, in a stormy night, and our anchor is making weird noise, and all of a sudden there's this giant crashing sound, and Garrett, my brother, and I run out onto the deck to see what's going on, and there's this other boat, and their anchor has drug across our anchor. So the two anchors are crossed, and we're both in our underwear, and we're both dead tired, and it's blowing 30 miles an hour and pouring rain. It's very cold. We go up to the front of the boat, and we're trying to detangle their anchor from ours, but it's really hard because the current is running at about 15 miles an hour. So there's tremendous forces at work, and the weather. And honestly, the guy running the other boat was a moron. I mean, he just did not do the right things to help. And we're yelling at him and trying to get him to do things. Eventually, we get their anchor up, but the chains are caught. And my brother, he grabbed it and pulled really hard, and it released, and the chain whipped. And then they went away, and we get back in the house and he's holding his hand like this. And I'm like, dude, what's wrong with your hand? And he took it off and there was this cut from the tip of his pinky all the way down here, like that deep, where the chain had just ripped his hand completely open. And there's blood everywhere. And my immediate thought was, I'm going to have to pick all the fish, which is a very selfish thought. I was like, you hurt your hand. So we super glued it shut and taped it. And then he ran the hydraulics for a week. And then he picked fish like this afterwards when it healed up. But still, that's the kind of danger. Something unexpected happens and you do things that you're not used to doing. You don't have, there's like all these routines and like list of things you've memorized. Whenever this happens, do this, this, and this. It's just simple things. Like my brother and I had all these like things, agreements. For example, when somebody says duck on the deck, you duck. Like you just duck. There's no reason. There's no question. You don't look around and go, why? You just hit the deck because something is going to kill you. And that kind of thing has happened a few times. A tow line hooks on something, tremendous pressure, releases and just sweeps across the boat with, so much pressure, it would kill you. And you want to be under it. So you listen when somebody says duck. But
I would imagine another rule is don't be the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah. There's a time and place for humor. I woke up with a dog salmon in my bunk once. That was really gross. They laughed and laughed. I didn't think it was funny. It's like, my sleeping bag's full of fish slime, you guys. But yeah, we did have some, storms and things that happened. But my dad had some really good principles that he fished by. And one of them, he would say it every year. And it was, we're not greedy. We're not greedy. Don't be greedy. And then we would go anchor up instead of fishing in the big storm. And it actually pays off because the guys that go out and fish in the big storm, sometimes they catch good fish, but a lot of times they get into trouble and they break their equipment. That's the big thing. See, storms are so hard on your boat. If your reel breaks or your level line breaks or your anchor breaks or you lose your anchor, you're not good. So
you're not up a creek with no paddle.
We have been that, but yeah.
No, I guess one of the things I was kind of curious about, not just like weather, but I mean, you call it what you will, call it Mother Nature or whatever. Like the weather is just freaky. Like the closest parallel that maybe I have is like the show Homesteaders or something. Like it doesn't matter how prepared you are, something's going to just throw a wrench in there. And it's like, you have to think on your feet and improvise. So how do you prepare for that side of it? Because you can have all these systems in place, but I would bet almost every season you were out there, something hit you weren't prepared for.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's like, so growing up on Kodiak Island, you do prep, like practice, drills, survival suit. I don't know if you're familiar with an exposure survival suit. It's like a red Gumby suit and it's a dry suit, but it's really loose fitting, but it's completely watertight. And it basically, instead of dying after 10 minutes and getting hypothermia and drowning, you can live for like 24 hours or more if you don't let any water inside in the ocean because it effectively keeps you warm. So in Kodiak, we would practice putting them on and off. Because if you can get it on fast enough before you're in the water, it really ups your survival chances. And they would have, at the Kodiak Island Crab Festival, survival suit contests, sponsored by the Coast Guard, by the way. and they'd have teams of crewmen, and you had to, the gun would go off, and you would race to put on the survival suit and put it on right. And then you had to run down the dock and jump into the water and then swim out to a life raft and then get in the life raft. And then when the last guy got in the life raft, the timer would end. And my brother and I did that a few times. We So there's some preparation. It never seemed very fair because the Coast Guard always had a team that would go, and they usually came in second to the other team that was Navy SEALs. The Navy SEAL cold training base was in Kodiak, and those guys were fast.
I can imagine.
Yeah, they got very good at putting on their survival suits. But, you have general drills that you practice, like new people on the boat always got this is where the fire extinguishers are. This is where the survival suits are. This is what we do in case of this. This is this. I mean, there's a lot of safety stuff that my dad was very safety conscious. And I think that instilled it in us. And you kind of develop a sense of, I'm going to say, awareness and of nervousness. To this day, I think I don't know if you would want to call it PTSD, but when somebody drops their cell phone or their metal water bottle, I hate those metal water bottles. I literally will jump in the air. Like I hear a loud noise and my body immediately goes into fight or flight mode. And what do I need to do to survive? And I think that is from a lot of years of commercial fishing, where you hear something explode, you hear something hit the boat, you hear something hit the prop, and it's like instant action. What do we have to do to make sure that everything's going to be okay? And, it's bad because it's the middle of the night and the dog brushes my leg and I literally will leap out of the bed yelling. It's like, I think they call that night terrors. I don't think it's actually a good thing, but it hasn't happened for a while. So that's good.
It's just, I can't even imagine. I'm trying to process being out there and some of that, but I just have no way of even comprehending it.
It's interesting. My brother would talk about this a lot. He was like, people should have this experience. We should make a tourist business and have people come out and be a crewman on our boat so they could just experience what this is like. And I'm like,
that sounds like a liability
terrible
nightmare.
idea. It's a terrible idea. The experience has so many good things with it, but there's so many tough things with it too. And
I hear that, and what comes to mind is let's say infantry in the army saying, let's take a random Joe off the street and take them to Afghanistan.
Yeah, so they can experience the trauma. No.
I would think you would need to have a serious amount of training. That was my first thought with some of these shows. Are these trained fishermen themselves that are going out and actually filming this?
Yeah.
Or is that just a nightmare to have them on? Something goes wrong. It's okay, you're now part of the problem, not helping her.
They do a lot of editing in those reality TV shows, and they're pretty unrealistic in some aspects of it. And my honest feeling is you would never want to have somebody with a camera and a camera crew be around when you're going through real stuff. There's no place for entertainment when people's lives are really at stake. And, the crabbing industry is so dangerous. It's gotten better over the years. A lot of it has to do with technology too. When I first started commercial fishing, there was no GPS. So it was all charts and compasses. And, it was very different. I mean, watching my dad run the boat to try and get back to the bay, get back to the harbor in the dark in a storm. And you're like, okay, buoy 4 should be around here somewhere. Lane, come here. I want you to look out there. You see any lights? And it's just like, you're like, oh crap. And with GPS, you just look at the little TV screen and you're like, I'm right here. Oh, there's a rock right there. There's another boat over here. And I just need to go this direction. It's very nice.
Way easier.
Yeah. Technology's been great.
Well, I want to pivot a little bit here. And I think this is a perfect place to do it. With your experience of being on those boats, does that change how you read books? When you hear history or crossing the ocean?
Yeah.
How did that influence just reading?
So I don't know if it changed the way I read, unless I'm reading a book about fishing, which I have a lot more knowledge about. But, when I started commercial fishing as a kid, there was no cell phones and no video games and there was nothing to entertain except books. And so when I was 10, we had this cardboard box, and it was just my mom would collect kids' books. And we're not talking like little kid books. We're talking about like The Borrowers or Ralph S. Mouse or Ramona the Pest, like all these kind of middle schooly novels, only we had hundreds of them. And I just read books like crazy when I was a kid on the boat. So I actually associated fishing with reading, because as a little kid, I couldn't pick fish. I wasn't fast enough and I wasn't strong enough. And I couldn't my dad, I think, didn't want us out on the back deck when it was really stormy. So, it was rough weather. I would just sit in a little spot in a bunk and I read for hours and hours. And I just really feel like, and I wonder too, if there's people read for escape, but when you're in a stressful environment, like being on a commercial fishing boat, it's stressful. And the escape level was so high for me. Like, it was just like this, I can just escape into this book about, the Chronicles of Narnia. Loved them, read them so many times. And I read so much Louis L'Amour, Western novels. And I just feel like fishing really had a lot to do with my love for reading. My parents, of course, loved to read also, so there was always a lot of books around. But I do think that because I was trapped on a boat, maybe the ability to read anything was reinforced, because there's a lot of people who like to read, but they're like, I read romance, I read mystery, I read nonfiction. Oh, I only read fiction. And that's not for me. I'm like, I'll read anything and everything I can get my hands on. I'm just excited to try something different. And
because it's not like you can go to the library,
exactly.
Right? It's just what you have on hand.
You get tired of the books in the box, because it was the same box of books every year. So I think maybe I was 15 years old, and one of the crewmen got a book from his wife, and it was called The Indentured Heart. And it was a Christian romance novel by somebody Morris. And I had never read anything like it before, and I loved it. I was just like, you're like 15 and you don't really realize that this is a book targeted at teenage girls, and it's just like soupy, gross romance. And I loved it. And it's just other books, like, a nonfiction book, and you read it and you're like, I didn't know that. And you just kind of read what is available and learn to kind of like the variety.
Yeah. Well, I have one thought there, but before I pivot to it, I'm a little curious, how the fishing and being on boats influence maybe history, or reading something like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, not necessarily fishing, but things on the water. Do you see coming over on the Mayflower differently and the challenge that was? How did that influence things like that?
So it is interesting. And I do remember thinking about the comparison. So the book I'm thinking about right now is James Michener's Alaska, where he talks about all the sailors and explorers that kind of went around Alaska and established the fur trade there. And the time that they were on the boat and the amount of investment of their life that they put in, those guys were gone for 5 years and 3 years. And Bristol Bay was 6 weeks. So there's definitely more man, I sure am glad I'm doing this and not that to it. Yeah, when you look at early explorers and their boats, that was a very different life than my life. I guess, so when I was in high school, we did start seining, and there were summers where I would have to leave school early and then get back to school about 2 weeks after school had started. And I was on the boat every single day, except for maybe 3 or 4 days of that whole time. So 3 months on the boat. And I did that for 5 years, I think. And I would say it does it. One of the things about commercial fishing, and when you kind of perceive history in general through that lens, is you kind of see how most human lives have a rhythm to them. And once you're in that rhythm, it just kind of happens. It's like we all get up and go to work, and we have our kids, and there's like this rhythm to it. And the fishing rhythm, even though it was hard, had a lot of really wonderfulness to it. And I don't really like change. I like rhythm. And so I know there has to be change, but at the same time, my favorite parts of fishing and some of my best memories are when the crew and the fish and nature was all in a rhythm, and you just were doing your work, being compensated for it, and it was just so much fun. You're just like, the net would come on, everything worked smoothly, and you just have such a good time in that state of flow. It's just really nice to have that rhythm. And as a computer programmer, I look for that, and I don't find it very often, because there's a lot of the flow is a physicality, like picking that fish just feels so good. And there's a flow to be found in problem solving with your brain and pressing keys, but it's not the same.
No, it definitely not.
Yeah.
Well, the thought I had that I referenced a second ago was you got good at reading because of scarcity of options, right? Yeah. So I'm curious through your lens, like, how do you see like the US, where we have quite often access to anything? I can pull up any book on my phone now. I can
crazy.
Like, it seems in some ways that that's limited us. You developed the ability to read anything, and now the amount of kids reading.
I've tried to read the Gulag Archipelago like 3 times, and I just can't do it. So I can't read anything. It's just, but I do wonder about that, and I do find it very worrying, but maybe not so much worrying. I don't want to be alarmist, but you look like even my friends who are computer programmers, and they're super smart people, smarter and better at it than I am. And I'm like, so what was the last book you read? And their answer, and this one, I always am like, oh, they're like, oh, I don't read. I'm like, what? That's like saying, oh, I don't breathe. I don't eat. I'm like, what? You don't read? And I just feel like they're missing out on so much, because reading is the ability to connect with people of such a huge variety. Like, you get to be that hero in the Western, but you also get to be that scientist explaining how synchronicity in human beings work. And it's just I think more of a sadness than anything. Because I feel like there's so much joy to be found in reading, and it can be such a great connector to other people. Like when 2 people meet each other and the other person says they read Brandon Sanderson, I'm like, I love Brandon Sanderson. Let's talk about Brandon Sanderson. He's my favorite author.
Mine too.
Excellent. I just really, I love books, and I love Brandon Sanderson, and I love to read. The amount of things you can learn by seeing things from other people's perspective, and reading itself is like an exercise in empathy. It's like you have to be the person. Their voices are in your head. And as a culture, we need more of that. We need more people being able to see things from other points of view.
I think that's a hard point for me to understand other people. And I think you would probably relate to me on this. When I read, that's more real to me than a movie, than almost anything. Like the way you described it, it's like literally I am living it out. I am in that book. I am experiencing it. Like, you can you can show me a movie of something that makes almost everybody tear up and like it won't move me. But if I read that same scene, like the impact it has is phenomenally greater.
I think so too. But
so many people, I feel like when they read, they're not experiencing it in the way we do. And I'm curious what the difference is. I actually had to stop myself from reading as an adult. So I stopped reading for years because I get so involved with it. I forget to eat. I forget to sleep. I forget to do anything. Like it becomes an obsession.
Yeah. I do that occasionally. I have to pace myself. It is interesting how different people experience different things, and being able to like understand that when I see something, it's different for another person, which is why consuming things together is so nice.
Yes.
Like watching a movie by myself, but watching, even though I'm not a really big movie person, showing my kids the Lord of the Rings movies was really fun, because it's like you can see them get so sad when this happens and so excited when this happens, and it's just like it's awesome. And
yes,
the music is good, and then sharing books with them has been fun. So my daughters read a lot, and I'll say, "What are you reading?" And she's like, "Well, I'm reading this young adult romance called Deathmark by Kate Stradling." And I'll be like, "That sounds interesting." And she's like, "Oh, that's not really for you." And then I get it and read it, and it was just like so good. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not the target audience. Yeah, it was written for teenage girls." I just really enjoyed reading it, partly because then I could talk about it with my daughter and be like, nerd out on the storytelling and on the characters and on the choices and on the themes, and I'm big on themes. I love stories of reconciliation when there's division and then characters grow and then they realize that the sum of them together is better than the parts and they overcome. I like stories of reconciliation are big for me. I like themes of romance, and this is going to be weird, not necessarily like squishy boy-girl romance, but like the romance of Zane Grey, who's an early Western author that my dad loved, so I was forced to read them on the boat. But like his description of man and nature and working the land and being a part of something bigger and more beautiful than you are. And that just so resonated with me. Zane Grey's writing about cowboys and working cattle, but I'm on a commercial fishing boat killing red salmon, and the sunset at 1:00 in the morning is just filling the sky and the fish are jumping, and you're just like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like romance. I like nature stories. I like all kinds of books though too. I like nonfiction and fiction and biography and mystery, and yeah.
I think one of my biggest challenges with reading, it got worse after I got into software development. I do not handle interruptions well. If I'm in the middle, like, leave me alone. Don't ask me what book I'm reading. Like, you've interrupted my train of thought. You've pulled me out of the book. I get so engaged with it. So it's almost like I have to have dedicated time that I can guarantee nobody's going to interrupt me. Otherwise, I almost don't want to get into it because it's so frustrating. And it got worse after being in software development because the context switching is so costly that
now I'm thinking about parenting. I'm like, parenting, kids are so inconvenient. That is a challenge. And I find I read a lot less when my work is at a certain level of intensity, because there's a lot of reading in my job. I'm always reading documentation and writing and coding and trying to understand and solve problems. So if work is intense, I'll find that my reading falls off. And I kind of go in phases too. Like, I won't read a book for, a couple weeks, and I'll watch TV, and, Elena will find something on TV she's interested in, I'll watch just because I want to sit by her, I guess. It depends on the show. But then I usually come back and find something that I'm excited to read.
I've found the best time for me to read is after everyone's gone to bed, but then I'll stay
That's hard
up
on you,
all
isn't
night.
it? Yep.
Yes.
Gotta be. That's what my wife does too. And I'm just like, Elena, you gotta go to sleep. She's like, just one more page. It's 1 o'clock in the morning.
She's going to bed early.
She's a night owl. I'm the one that I'm like 10 o'clock, time to go to bed.
For the longest time, I was a major night owl, and I'm talking like 4 a.m.
Oh boy.
And I would sleep till, like 1 p.m. For a long time. And then when I got into the career I'm in now, I flipped because I hated the traffic.
Yeah.
And so I would get up at 4, drive in at 5, leave at 3 to avoid all the traffic.
Oh, man.
And so I flipped some of my schedule, but I am the type of morning person that it's like, give me my caffeine, usually a soda of some sort, and don't interact with me for an hour. You're just going to get grunts. Like, I do not handle mornings well. I can focus really well on work and get a lot done, but I am not capable of interacting with people first thing in the morning. But give me the night owl, and it's like, I can churn through work really well in the morning, but the creative juices flow best at night. So if I'm wanting to work on something creative, even if it's like been personal coding projects, or if I'm wanting to work on writing a book or fleshing out some other idea I have, or reading books, that's when I'm most creative and most enjoy it. So it's been very hard. I would stay up every night if I could.
Yeah. And as a parent of young kids, that's one of the few times occasionally that you're not interrupted.
Yes.
I remember that. I think I did stay up a lot more when my kids were that age. My kids are all, I've got 2 in high school and 1 in college. So everything has changed now.
Yes.
And I think I'm older too. So 10 o'clock, time for bed, but ready to go at 7 a.m. and pretty much, I would say, not a grumpy morning person. Like, I wake up and I'm ready to do anything. So, and I think, fishing comes into that. You get so sleep deprived that, and it's just, there's like this, it is unfair to be grouchy on a fishing boat. Like, we are trying to get something done. And if you're going to make an already hard situation harder by being grouchy, that is not cool. And the captain will step in. They're like, no. There's no such thing as toxic positivity on a boat. Just be positive. You can't overdo it. This is super hard. Nobody has slept for 20 hours. Just smile and be glad you're here. Because it'll be over soon. And I like mornings.
I guess I should caveat what I said with that, like, if I have to engage or something has to get done, like I can absolutely get up and do it and not be a grouch. But it's more like, if it doesn't have to be, then it's like.
I noticed we're having this recording session in the afternoon and not between 5 and 7 in the morning.
Well,
I'm really glad, by the way.
I have to have time my guests will agree to come on.
Yeah.
And I've thought of recording later. I've thought of opening that up, but also, you have to be able to let the kids sleep and not wake them up.
Yeah. Gotta organize. We engineer our lives, don't we?
Yes.
Try and make everything work.
Yes. Well, talking about all the books, you've led Sunday school at church for like 20 years. Mm-hmm. And one theme I saw you pull through was picking different books and going through them.
Yep.
So I'm curious what some of the impactful books have been that, I don't know if I want to say have spoken to you or spoken to groups the most. Like, how have you engineered that arena?
So, my Sunday school class has changed a lot over the years. So I was originally asked to do it because the original teachers were moving, and it was the young marrieds class. So it was just all these newly married kids. I think of it now and I'm like, man, we're all so young. Nobody had any kids. We were all like early 20s, recently married. And so I said I would take over, and Oh, I did a lot of, you know, the kind of books that I'm going to say that were published for groups like I was in. So a lot of like Christian books on marriage and love and some finance stuff. We went through Wild at Heart. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. It's not a book I would necessarily recommend, but I remember going through a lot of those kinds of books early on, and it was very different socially because there was no kids, and a lot of them were friends from college, and it was just different. I would say when it comes to the books I've done, I've always tried to go back and forth between a book of the Bible and actually like in depth. I'd read the commentary, I'd read a chapter of the Bible, and just really try and find things in it that was practical and useful for people in their lives, and also communicated the number one most important thing that I try to, my entire Sunday school class for 22 or 3 years or whatever has been to try to tell people that Jesus loved them so much he died on the cross for them. That's like you start right there. Jesus loves you, and try and be encouraging. I think that is like what has kept the class going and kept me going, because there is a lot of meaning to be found in showing Jesus' love to people. The class itself, underneath that general message, you can look at all kinds of different books I've gone through. And when you say, okay, name some ones that are my favorite and most meaningful, C.S. Lewis gets a big nod here. I love C.S. Lewis. And I've taught out of a book called The Four Loves, which is super good. And The Great Divorce, super good. Even the Screw Tape Letters, which is like short and easy to read. Such good messages in there. It's very classic and kind of literature-y. It's the kind of book I would teach out of, and I'm pretty sure no one else in the class was reading along with me. Like I would read it, and then I would kind of interpret what I had read. But other books, recently in the last 4 or 5 years, I did a book called Unoffendable. And Unoffendable is like contemporary, written by a radio personality from Christian radio. And when I first heard about the book, and I thought, this is going to be dumb. And I read it, and it's not like C.S. Lewis, intellectual and very challenging. It's very easy to read, but also incredibly funny. The guy has such a good sense of humor, and that goes a long way with me. But the message of the book also really resonated, especially in kind of a outrage generating culture. This idea that we as Christians need to be unoffendable, that outrage and selfish indignation are selfish and in looking feelings that are terribly unhealthy for us spiritually. And this idea that there is no need for us to be offended when we are connected to Almighty God. And I really liked that book. I'm a big fan of Dallas Willard. He's the guy that said we must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from our lives, and he's got some I'm going to say acolytes from all of his work. John Ortberg as one of them, and Will Foster. No, that's my friend. And anyway, other books inspired by Dallas Willard have been good, and then just books of the Bible, a lot of commentary stuff. But
yeah,
a lot of it is just kind of exploratory to see what I can find that helps people where they're at. And it's changed over the years. When people in the class were first having kids, there's parenting books I went through, and we talked about parenting and finances, and now most of my class is people my age. So we've got kids in college and kids who are adults, and it's just changed. It's changed a lot, but still been fun. And I recently read a book called All About Love. And in that book, the definition of love was to extend yourself to grow another spiritually. And of course, as a Sunday school teacher, I'm like, But I do feel like one of the reasons I keep doing Sunday school, and one of the reasons I love it, is I feel like it is a concrete way of my expression of Jesus' love. And that means a lot to me. So I can't say I always love it, especially on Saturday nights when I haven't prepared anything. But it's been something I haven't given up, and I'm going to keep doing it. So
yeah, I think one of the phrases is, I'm going to butcher it, but like, if you want to know what you don't know, teach to someone else.
Yeah.
Like, it's a great way to stretch and grow yourself.
Yep. And one of the things about reading that is so great is that I can have something that I read to talk about with another person. And if it's interesting, they'll be excited to hear about it. But explaining it to them to say, I read this in a book, makes it so I'll remember it. It's like, you just like, because I read it in a book and then told people about it, I'll have these ideas in my head for years and years and years. So.
Yeah. That's actually one of the foundational reasons I started the podcast is I had seen over and over and over, like, I love to read. I love to do all this, but it's almost like it's going in one ear and out the other because I don't have anyone that's interested in talking the topics I'm interested about. I felt like I'm just consuming. I want to give something back to the world, but I also want to have what I'm consuming mean something. Like, I don't want to read it and forget it.
And
I want to read it and apply it.
Yeah. It's amazing how if you teach somebody else a principle that you've learned, it makes you actually understand it so much better. And then you actually get better at teaching it. So then you'll have a conversation, and you'll have another conversation, and you'll have another conversation, and you'll remember that. Then you'll read another book, a different book, but it kind of applies. And then you'll say it's slightly different, and people will be like, oh, that's really interesting. And you're like, I think that is interesting. It's just, love to read. But great point. So much of why I love to read is because I love how it connects me with people. And that one thing, I'm a closet introvert. I like being alone. But I understand very well that the road of isolation leads to unhappiness very quickly for me. So books are a way of me to connect with almost anyone. And that connection is what gives it value. Like the connecting is far more important than the feeling good that it ended happy or that I have information now. Being able to laugh with somebody about it and tell somebody else about the book, which is always fun. Yes. I love it when people tell me about books that they're reading. Somebody will just mention in passing that they're reading this book, and I'll surprise them. I'll just go check it out. I'll read the whole thing and then say, hey, I read that book you're reading for your book club. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. The last one I did that with, the book was called Frozen River. And it was about, I think her name is Martha Ballard. And she was a midwife in the late 1700s. And they have her journals, and they're like historically amazing to people because she took all these journals about her life. And this author took those journals and wrote a murder mystery. And it's like, I'm so not the target audience. Like, the target audience is women's book clubs. It has all of the women's book club tropes in it. It's super good, but it was not for me. I still loved it. I was just like, man, this is cool. And then, you talk to the person later and it's like, hey, did you finish that book? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, I read it too. And then you have a conversation. It's fun.
Yeah. There's another piece of this that I'm really curious to dig into, though, because like, you look at someone's worldview and everything they experience shapes that worldview. So every time you read a book, it's going to be different. You could read the same book and come back and read it again after reading something else, and you're going to experience it differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that especially applies to the Bible. But then this plays out as a paradox in my mind. Like, if everything shapes our worldview, we need to be careful what we consume in what order. Like, you don't, in some ways, like, you don't want to say, well, you know, the Bible's absolute truth, so that's the only thing we should read. Because there's things that let us read the Bible in different ways and reveal itself to us more. But how do you select what you read to allow into that? There's the other side of that is like, we want to bring goodness into the world, right?
Yeah.
Not evil, but there is benefit in studying evil. Like the Gulag Archipelago, you bring up things like that.
Oof.
Like,
So depressing.
do you want to sit and read and study evil? But at the same time, that allows you to read and understand other things differently. So how do you strike that balance of what
It's a
to
good
read?
question. And I don't have a very good answer. I will say that I just taught a lesson on Philippians chapter 4, where the peace of God will protect our hearts and minds. And then it says, finally, focus on these things, whatever is true, noble. It's kind of a list of things we're supposed to focus on. And I think that the idea here is not that we should avoid the bad things in the world. And it's interesting because there are bad things that are bad for us that are fake that we enjoy. Violent movies, violent video games. You know, there's even just books that are, I'm going to say brain bubble gum, but the whole point of the book is to, you know, write a salacious sex scene or to describe horrible violence. You know, these are probably not good for my spiritual life. And the Bible can be, I mean, a lot of people have never gone through an in-depth study of Judges, and there's a reason for that. You don't want to read Judges until you're ready, and you don't want to know. It's like you need to kind of prepare for some of the stories in there and have context and understanding. So it's not so much a matter of, and it's interesting. The Greek of that think on these things is that it's not that think word is an accounting word. It's an inventory word. In other words, it's not ignore all the bad, only focus on the good. It's like make sure the balance is set so that you will have the peace of God with you. And a theme that has kind of been going through my mind in the last year or so has been one where everyone needs to preserve their ability to do good in the future. In other words, it's good to know what's going on in the news, right? It's good to be aware and educated of everything that's happening. But your mental health is so much more important than experiencing the trauma that everyone else is out there. And so much of the news is built around outrage and offense, and it's built around an expression that makes the user feel the feels so that they'll keep reading, so that they'll click the next thing. Mm-hmm. And that is dangerous because so many of the results of that kind of consumption, whether it's the news or movies or books or anything, if the end result is one that pushes you towards selfishness and self-centeredness, you are hurting your spiritual life. You are compromising your relationship to Christ. And so that whole think about good things is all about making sure that you keep in contact with Christ in your life, that you redirect from selfishness to being in the appropriate posture of where you are and who you are and what this life is about, right? And I basically have been saying that sort of thing in my Sunday school class for 20 years.
Kind of what comes to mind as you're talking about that lesson for me is like count your blessings. Like we hear that phrase all the time, but I think sometimes literally it means intentionally list out, count your blessings. Like find the silver linings. It's too easy to get lost in depression or any of these things. Literally sit down and take note. You're saying make accounting for, like, I'm seeing that as literally get out in a ledger and you're going to make note of your assets. These are all the good things.
Yeah.
And be intentional recognizing those.
The scientific studies around gratitude journaling are very interesting, and yes. It has amazing repercussions, like reframing your brain to think about all of the good things you have and how thankful for them are is amazingly powerful. We might talk about AI here later, but it's really interesting to like go to ChatGPT and say, hey, ChatGPT, let's have a conversation about things I should be thankful for. And it'll like think of things and you'll be like, oh yeah, I am thankful for that. So I'm not advocating ChatGPT as therapy or anything, but it has been interesting to like use it in the context of Sunday school class to like help me think of ideas.
Yeah. I guess building on that, going back also to the accounting side, is it's very easy to take things for granted. So when you're saying take account for, when you're saying mark down, like it's saying be cognizant of all those things that you take for granted.
Oh yeah. And of course the starting of that section is Paul saying rejoice. Again, I say rejoice, and that like is an imperative command. He's not like saying, hey, could you please be thankful? He's like, no, rejoice. And then when he says, do not be anxious about anything in the next line, that is an invitation. That's not the imperative. He's not saying like, hey, don't have anxiety, which is kind of like telling a person with cancer not to have cancer. You just don't do that. And what Paul is actually doing is he's inviting us and saying there's a transition. And the word he uses for anxiety there, we think of it as the English version of that, which comes from the Latin, which is choking, like, oh, I'm so stressed out, I'm anxious. Whereas the Greek is distracted. It's not a choking, it's being pulled in different directions. And that kind of applies to the gratitude thing. Like it's much easier to stay focused and be happy and live a life that you want to live when you don't let yourself get constantly pulled in all these different directions. And, doom scrolling is bad.
Yes. I hear the don't be anxious, and what comes to my mind wasn't that choking feeling. What came to my mind, even before you explained that, was more of a, don't focus on, don't dwell on, don't allow yourself to be consumed by anxiety. Like focus on the good things, redirect your attention. Are you familiar with Jordan Peterson? Mm-hmm. I follow a lot of what he does. And like one of the original definitions for sin was to miss the mark in archery, right? Mm-hmm. You aim at a target. What people don't realize is we can direct our attention. We can direct a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And so when I hear don't be anxious, what I'm hearing is redirect your focus and attention, not saying don't experience the literal physical thing that is anxiety that can affect people, but don't aim towards that anxiety. Don't dwell on it. Don't try and go in that direction. Change your focus, change your aim over into the gratitude.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm trying to remember what book it came from, but it came to mind a lot when I was reading Philippians 4 was this idea of narratives. The idea that we're story people. Our human beings are literally like story machines. Our brains are all about narratives, and the narratives that you experience are not necessarily by choice. People who come from abusive households, man, they have some tough narratives to get over.
Yes.
And the narratives go in your brain, but your subconscious is subconscious. You cannot see what is in there, but you're putting stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
And what's in there will come out. And the idea that you can, that what you pay attention to becomes your life is a powerful one. And you want to make sure that whatever you're paying attention to, after the narrative, after the experience, after it goes in your subconscious, what's going to come out. And, we have these common narratives that I think really are detrimental to our Christian lives, like the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, or pull themselves up by their bootstraps, or these other narratives that a lot of times are despairing. And the idea that love can change the world, the answer to that as a Christian needs to be yes. But so oftentimes, because we're exposed to all these narratives of terrible things happening, or terrible things happen to us, the narratives that come out in the end are things like, I'm worthless. Oh, that's a toughie. Or what's the point anyway? These ideas that will come out later because we didn't do the inventory, because we didn't protect our hearts and minds, or somebody else didn't protect our hearts and minds for us. That's a brutal one. I'm a big fan of therapy. I'm like, there is so much that people can come back from. But part of that is the understanding that your narratives can be wrong and flawed, and that you can do something about it. Like, again, do what you need to do to preserve your ability to do good in the future. And when I say good in the future, I mean love people like you love yourself.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I got something partially from my dad that I've kind of carried my whole life. And it's not to be a reductionist or say literally everything in the Bible can be summed up like this, but like, I read the Bible through the lens almost exclusively of everything in there can be summed up in love God and love others. Like
it does say in there that the most important thing is to love your neighbor as yourself and love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Not in that order.
But it's like, I have to be aware that I'm even reading this through that lens. Because I mean, the church has been fractured with endless denominations, and I kind of coined a term. I love to talk theology. I love to have these discussions, but I say I'm not going to get upset about what I call a salvation issue. Like, you'll have some people argue hell exists, and some argue that hell doesn't exist, that there's a burning lake of fire or just eternal death, like you just cease to exist. And to me, I'm not called to worry about whether hell exists or not. I'm called to love God and love others.
Yeah.
Whether hell exists or not should have no impact on how I actually operate in the world. I'm called to love. So it's not love only if there's a hell chasing behind me. Like, so, but a lot of these denominations have fractured, and some are judgmental. Like, you have to do it exactly this way. And I have to realize, like, we all read this differently. We all experience this differently. I am reading through a specific lens, and I'm not God, so there's no way I can say I'm reading this in the exact perfect way. I don't believe that, but my understanding lends itself to that lens that I have. But then it's like, if I count it going back to making a count of stuff, I count it a good thing that we have different denominations. Like the Nazarene Church was founded to minister to recovering addicts.
Yep.
So like we, in the Nazarene manual, we don't believe in gambling. We don't believe in drinking, not because we inherently believe drinking is a sin, but we're not trying to put stumbling blocks in those we're trying to minister to. They're recovering from addiction. Yep. And I think the Nazarene Church has maybe changed a little bit in direction. Maybe that's not their sole focus, is to recovering addicts. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I'm not involved in the leadership, right? But like that serves a good purpose. That doesn't mean that every church out there can't consume alcohol, because it's made with intention to minister to someone.
Yeah.
Like we serve vastly different purposes. I don't think one denomination is just the right one.
So my younger sister is Russian Orthodox, and it's just really fun to talk to her about this very thing, because the things that she finds so meaningful about her faith and the things I found meaningful about my faith are different. And her church really has helped her a ton and is wonderful. And, you know, my church means a lot to me too, but it is okay that there's different denominations. And one of the things you said earlier kind of resonated with me. It's this idea that, so there are problems in the world that we cannot solve. And as a person who likes to solve problems for a living, I oftentimes want to iterate while I change out the variables until I have the answer. And as a Christian, I need to remind myself that's not what we're called to do. It's like, I don't have to have the answer. I often say that I don't like talking about theology. And what I mean by that is I don't like talking about things I don't have good answers for. And I don't like divisiveness.
Yes.
I'm a third born child, and I'm a peace at any cost, avoid confrontation introvert. My main things are, why can't we all just get along? And I'm just happy to be here. Like those are like my go-to thought processes. And so when I see people get up and say things like 7-day creation is a salvation issue, and if you don't literally believe, if you believe in an ounce of evolution, you're going to hell, I just cringe. I'm just like, that, I don't know. I don't want to talk about that. I don't have a good answer. I don't want to answer about it, but I think I disagree. And also, the guy's trying to sell his book, which bugs the heck out of me. I'm like, yay for Christian materialism.
Yeah. That's why I coined the term salvation issue. Like, my God's big enough, he could have done it through evolution, or he could have done it through exact 7-day creation. Like, I wasn't there. I don't know. Regardless of which way it was created, I still have the same mandate: love God and love others. Like, it's not a salvation issue and shouldn't change anything about my actions. Do I find it fascinating to talk about? Absolutely. I love discussing it, but not when it's just going to cause issues. I'm called to love people. And if discussing that with someone is just going to drive a rift or make them feel unloved, like, it's hurtful for me to have those discussions, because I don't view that as something important. So I'll filter those discussions to people who enjoy talking about it, that it's not going to cause a rift. And
when there's like unknown, focus on the outcomes. Like, what are the fruit? That's the Christianese way of saying it. What are the fruit coming out of this? And if the outcomes of whatever it is result in outrage, indignation, profit, manipulation, I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's what we're supposed to be doing here. But if the outcome is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, now this is a good conversation. And any conversation, any discussion where people are encouraged to know Christ better and be like Christ to others is okay with me.
Yeah. I definitely agree. I like I said, I love having the conversations, but it's just, it comes into conflict with love God and love others. Like, be aware of your audience.
And my dad used to talk about one issue voting, and how he's like, there's a lot of people out there who take an issue and they make it the most important thing. It's all that matters. And they're willing to gloss over everything else, treat people like garbage, because this one thing is the most important thing. And as long as they're right, then everything is going to be fine. And that is like against what being Christ-like is about. What's the quote I was thinking of? When the will to power is paramount, love will be lacking. I can't believe I remembered that. It's the idea that when what you care about is being right, you're not going to be Jesus to anybody.
No.
Yeah.
Well, we did bring up AI, so I wanted to pivot a little bit.
All right.
And I'll kick it off in an interesting way.
Okay.
AI allows you to come up to speed on things incredibly fast, do research for you faster than you can do. Gone are the days of knowing the exact Google skills when you can just talk to it and have it come up with the right.
It was so good at Google, Brenton. I was like, Google foo.
Yes.
Now it's gone.
Now you can talk to it and let it do the Google magic.
It does everything.
But
so are you going to be the alarmist, or am I going to be the alarmist?
Combination of both.
Okay, let's go.
But before we get there, I was curious, has AI helped or shaped some of your approach to teaching the Sunday school class?
My old method of teaching Sunday school was I had a Bible and I had a commentary and maybe another book, and I would just read it and make notes. And it was a lot of work and hard and tedious. And then Google. When I figured out that you could go to websites and say, hey, I want the Henry whatever commentary on this section, and it would just come right up. I was like, this is great. And so I spent hours reading commentaries online. And I got better and better at Googling. And then, the whole landscape of the internet has been in constant change since it started. And YouTube videos and online messages, and churches across the world started publishing the transcript of the message that Sunday. And so you had, like, you'd say, you just say, I want preaching on this passage in the last 5 years. And it was like, whoa, and you could go down rabbit holes forever and ever and ever.
Yes.
It was fun, but also extremely time consuming. And it was amazing how often you'd just read and read and read. And then, you'd be like, no, none of this is stuff I really want to talk about. With AI, you can, you give it the passage, and then I have like a set of prompts, and they're things like, give me interesting commentaries about these verses from popular theologians, and it will give you some interesting stuff. Or even more specifically, like I'll say, like this morning's Sunday school lesson, I was like, I'm interested if N.T. Wright, who's one of my favorite theologians from the UK, has said anything about this passage. And it's just like, and it's so good. You're just like, man, that's so good. And so that has been very fun. And the ability to have it define the Greek and kind of go into detail about what the Greek means. And, it'll tell you like this set of commentaries really emphasize this, but these other commentaries emphasize this, and this scholar says this. It's amazing. And I feel like it is fun and a powerful tool. I do worry about, because it takes less effort. And occasionally it'll say something and I'll be like, that doesn't sound quite right. And then you'll follow it up and you'll go to, you'll say, click citation, and it goes to the citation, and it's citing what it said is the truth, and what it is citing is a web page where somebody has printed what AI told them. And so it's like this circular lie that gets out there and just kind of, you're like, that sucks. So there's definitely some problems where you have to be aware that it's not always right. I like the 80% number. I say 80% of the time it's right. So with that in mind, if I'm saying something that has repercussions, if I'm wrong, I'll research it and make sure that it's not making things up. But for the most part, I found it to be very useful. Sometimes so useful, I'm like, man, why am I even a Sunday school teacher anymore? We could just go to class and talk to Gemini about Philippians.
It's the relational aspect. If you didn't have someone leading it, how many people would sit down and prompt it?
That's an interesting point. One of the problems with AI is that there is no human connection. You are interacting with an algorithm that is, an orchestrated large language model. It has no soul. It has no skin in the game. It is there's an element of meaninglessness in there that people should be aware of. You read all these newspapers about like people who fall in love with ChatGPT or were led on by ChatGPT. I just read one yesterday. I don't usually read them, but this one was interesting. And the lady was convinced that the AI had convinced her that it was a real person and wanted to meet her at the beach. And so she went to the beach and AI didn't show up and she was heartbroken. And I was like, I don't know. Yeah. There is definitely, again, though, when you already are starting with, you take 1 million people, there's going to be some people in that million that have some serious mental illness issues. And then you give them all ChatGPT, bad things could happen. But I don't know. You got to be careful.
Yes. It's, in my mind, it's much like any other tool, though. When the tractor first came out, everybody thought the world was going to end because all the farmers, like so many people were farmers, it was going to do away with all the jobs. Yep. And, all it takes is one unstable person with the plow to go ruin someone else's crops. There's dangers in anything and everything we have and do. We need to learn appropriate use. The part that scares me is always the adjustment phase.
Yeah.
Like these major technologies are almost always followed by wars.
Well, I hope that there's not wars. I don't like wars.
Me either.
I read a lot of books about war and I don't like them. But, there is definitely going to be careers that are changed by this. My own defensive mechanism is to learn about it as much as I can and use it in a way that benefits me and makes it so I can tell other people how to use it to benefit themselves. At my job, the use of AI has not resulted in anybody looking around and saying, oh, I don't have enough to do. What it's done is made it so people can do stuff faster, but there's always more that needs to be done. And,
yes.
And really, when you look at writing software, the problem has never been the writing of the code. It's been the writing of the correct code. And when I look back on my 26 years of software engineering, there is almost no code that I've written that's still running, which is pretty sad when you think about it. It was like when I worked on the Y2K project for Sears. Well, Y2K was kind of a one-off. And of course, Sears is gone. So all that COBOL code, COBOL programmer, old, all gone. All that work, years and years of work and education. Like I was good at writing COBOL. That is meaningless now. So yeah, I don't know. But I use AI a lot at work and I play around with it some too, just to learn things. And it's amazing how fast it's changing. I don't think that programming is going away, but I do think that more and more programming will become the creative problem solving and the ability to tell AI what to do in a way that gets what's needed done. I mean, you can sit down at, a Copilot and just say, hey, write me an amazing web app, and it will write you a web app, and it will be terrible. Like the communication skills, you have to know the right things to say to get the right functionality in the right way that's production ready. And then you have to, of course, test it. So there's a lot more to AI than just vibe coding.
Yes. I think one of the ways I heard it described, if you're going to use AI, talk to it like it's the smartest person that's ever lived that has a PhD in everything, but it's autistic.
I like that. Yeah.
Like, you have to spell things out. You have to be direct. You have to give the context. They may miss your cues, like maybe the smartest thing, but
it's getting to a point now where it's actually really good. And the reason is because now, you have the ability to create instruction sets and continually tell the AI to go through the instruction set and say, make sure this is this way, make sure this is this way, make sure this is this way, make sure, and then it has all these other files to read and check and make sure it's doing it correctly. And you can get a lot done going that route. You always have to be careful, and you always have to test. Always test.
Yes.
But I've had a lot of success using AI to solve problems that would have taken me a lot longer. I think with any new technology, there's going to be upheaval, and there is going to be some. If you have a job that can be done by AI, you probably should find a different job or find something else that you can branch into and do more with the help of AI. It's a tool, powerful tool. But when you look at technology in general, every new technology results in new kinds of careers.
Yes.
It's like we've been, the whole technology is going to change everything. And then in the future, there'll be no work for humans to do. That was a big deal. Like in the 1920s, that's not a real thing at all. It's like there's always, humans are so good at coming up with new work to do.
Yes.
So I just think there is going to be some upheaval, and I do think that it would behoove them to learn how to use it as best they can. I don't buy into it will be the end of all technical work. That's the alarmist point of view. Or Skynet, it's going to take over everything also. Bugs me. But yeah, AI is very interesting and has some really useful things that it can do.
Yes. I think there are aspects of it that do scare me. Like, my degree's a math degree, right? And one of the benefits of a math degree isn't that you can solve math problems. Why math is so important is it teaches the rational, logical thinking, and which is hugely important for programming, right?
It is.
Like, computers do what you tell them to do, whether you intended to tell them to do that or not. Like, it is,
unless it's a non-deterministic large language model, then it hallucinates about 1% of the time.
But like, what are computers good at? Logic, because they're like pure logic. Well, AI is an extension of that logic. And where I'm going with that is, what are they going to understand first and best? Not human emotions, but logical structures.
And even the word understand has different.
Yes.
You're talking about something different. There's no understanding as humans do. There's no human brain. There's no soul. There's no hormones or passion or anything like that.
No.
It's all probability distributions.
Yes.
And so what that means is it can write a novel, and it can create videos, and it can draw pictures, and it can write code. But all of it is derivative based on probability fields of your prompt and what it's been trained on. And
Yes.
the problem is that you can not push new boundaries if all you're using is derivative stuff. Maybe you can use it to put pieces together to push boundaries, because that's the way technology has always worked, is you're taking building blocks and doing something new with them. But the derivative nature of it and the meaninglessness associated with the nothingness that is its soul, I think is. So here's my optimistic hope. Our brains are trained to connect to other brains.
Yes.
That's why we're here. It's what it means to be human. So when you open up a feed or anything that has headlines or whatever, your brain already is very good at picking out spam and just ignores it. Like, we mute commercials, we turn off this, we block the spam. We are not interested in those connections because they are meaningless. The person on the other end is not a person. It's a machine sending out 1 billion emails and hoping that one person clicks. And
Yep.
Yeah. And even though AI can make art and make like poetry and write stuff, because there's no human, people will gloss over it. And the more the internet is flooded with AI content, the more need people will have to connect to real people. And because there's an inherent risk now that anything online, even this podcast, is computer generated, it will drive people to meet in real life more. That people will come together to have in-person relationships even more, because now you can't be sure if your friend really did post that on Instagram.
Yep.
Because there's all these bots now that just make stuff up, that people can steer them and try and make them amusing. But all this AI generated stuff is going nuts. And all of these platforms are trying to figure out how to capitalize in it, but also how to make it not ruin everything.
Yes.
So I don't think they can. The book I read, what was that book called? It wasn't a very good book. And the reason why it wasn't good is because you could tell he used AI to write a lot of it. It was a book about AI, and he's like talking about how great AI was, and it was like not well written. You're like, you use ChatGPT a lot to write this, and it's not good.
And what's the first indicator? EM dashes?
I think he fixed that one, but you just kind of got the feel. You were just like that blah derivative. You're just like, this is not great. But what he did say in the book that was interesting, actually, he didn't say it in the book. The book was terrible. In real life, it wasn't even a podcast. It was live. It was at a conference I was at. He was a speaker at a conference. Man, I can't remember his name. He said that the rise of paywalls is already happening. And what the future of the internet is people will have to start subscribing, paying money to access guaranteed human content, because people want something made by people, because then you can connect with them. When you know that Brandon Sanderson wrote the book, you can hear his voice. You see him, you know him in a way that is cool. When you read AI generated poetry, you can really get a sense for the meaninglessness of the universe. You're just like, this is just nothing. And more and more, we're going to have a way to access guaranteed human content on screens.
Yep.
And that gets expensive. It's much cheaper just to go have coffee with somebody.
Yep.
That's my optimistic take.
One of the ways they've talked about doing that is on the blockchain. So sign every post And so it's live on the blockchain. Then you can verify that it was
Interesting.
made by this author. So that's been one of the proposed solutions. But I can see that only being behind the paywall.
Yeah.
We'll sign stuff that's behind our subscriber
and
paywall.
That's part of the problem is the old model of you create content, you get ads to sponsor that content and get money to make more content is dying because AI can generate content ad infinitum for almost nothing.
Yep.
And how do you compete with that?
Well, there's a number of ways. Do content that's beyond its context limits.
Yeah.
Go longer, write longer. Like AI is going to do a lot of short form stuff. It's going to struggle with longer, bigger stuff. And you can break it into pieces, but there's tells.
Oh, yeah. And that's what I was going to say. And as you make AI content longer, it becomes so obvious that it's AI. And yes, so that's like part of the challenge, right? So when I use AI to work on my Sunday school lesson, is that a disservice to people? Am I being influenced by this meaningless derivativeness? And I struggle with that sometimes. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't bring up this. Like, it'll say, hey, why don't I write a story for you that illustrates this point? And I'm like, okay. And it writes this big, long story, and it's not very good. And you're just like, this is like a really bad sermon analogy. It's like the computer read every bad sermon analogy out there and then created this one, because that's exactly what it did.
Yep.
I'm like, yeah, I can't use that. I'm going to forget that I read that. But at what point do you cross the line? I mean, I use AI to write my annual reviews, for example, at work. But what I do is I write my annual review, just me, and then I say, this is all written by Lane. Below is my AI annual review. And I submit them both. And my boss gets a real big kick out of it. Because the AI one, because he knows that all of his employees are using AI, but lots of them are not honest about it. They just use it. And there's so many variations. Like, you can use it poorly and it'll generate junk. You can use it very well and generate something that's actually pretty good. But the huge range in there is interesting. And the goal is to connect with people.
Yep.
So if I can use AI to fix my spelling errors and my punctuation errors, that seems like a great idea. I'm very bad at spelling. But the challenge and the trick is if you're using AI to write something and it's for a human audience, I feel like you are morally obligated to let them know that AI was used to do this. Even if it's just like a little note. And a lot of times if it's not very much AI, it could just be like, I use ChatGPT to fix some of the writing here. But people who just like say, do my annual review and turn it in like they wrote it, or they generate an entire email that they send to everyone, and you can just tell it was like badly done in ChatGPT. You're just like,
yep.
There needs to be some rules around if the content is for consumption by people. And I say that because right now, like, the hiring market is crazy. So there's no way you can get an interview because there's so many resumes out there being generated by AI. Like, the only way to get an interview is you hire a company to do that. They generate 1,000 versions of your resume and send all 1,000 of them altered specifically for the posting. Then HR has their own AI that filters through all of those to make sure that the keywords match. And, if I'm writing something and it's going to be judged by AI, I'm going to use AI to write that, because it is, why should I really spend time trying to connect to this other AI? Yeah. So content for AI, use AI. writing content for humans, you should be very clear about how much AI you've used.
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing.
I used AI for part of my annual review as well. But like you said, I was straight up front the whole time. Like, I used AI for this, but I like using workflows. So I guess workflows is a terrible name there. Like, I'm not referring to a specific named thing. I like keeping document trackers of everything.
Okay.
So then the usefulness of AI is like, go through all the documented records and summarize this so that I can see at a high glance what I'm doing. And then I write my review. So it's it's like summarize so I can bring stuff forward. And then I can write my review. It's not like it's directly writing my review, but it can pull out of all my documentation far faster than I can to go read through it.
And you like forget what you worked on last March.
Yeah.
And I actually did this for my annual review. It was very useful. I was like, hey, look at my email and find all of the projects I worked on in last March, because I can't remember. And it was like, oh, you had this meeting and this meeting and this meeting, and you talked about this. And I'm like, oh yeah.
Yep.
That was like 6 months of my year, and I totally forgot to mention it, and it was hugely successful. Sweet. So very useful, especially at the organization and the jockeying of data. So we had some fraudulent charges on my credit card on Friday. So we had to cancel the credit card and do all that rigmarole. And on a whim, just for fun, I downloaded my annual statements from my credit card company, from my bank, and from PayPal. And I think, those three. And I threw them in a data directory. And they were all different formats, CSV, PDF, and some of them are big, some of them are small. And I was just like, read through these files, and I want you to create a JSON file that has the following information. And it was like, find all recurring charges, the average in which they charged, how they were paid for, if they've changed, just like all this stuff that would have literally taken me weeks and weeks and weeks to go through. And it took like 45 minutes. It's just like playing around with different prompts and different things. Yep. And the outcome is this nice spreadsheet with all of my questions answered so that I can watch. I'm like stupid fraudsters. I got to watch my stuff now for a while. But very useful.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of use in it, but I think everybody's treating it as more than just a tool.
I am worried the whole investing thing, like the stock market, and how much billions and billions is being invested in AI. I find that's like more scary to me than AI. I'm like, remember when everybody invested all this money in pets.com and all these other .coms, and it went like, yeah, that was not great. And I feel like this might be the same thing, but a lot of it is so emotional too. Like, I mean, there are so many companies spending so much money on projects for AI that have zero ROI. Like, they spend millions of dollars to build an AI studio, and it's junk. Like, and then there's other people like me who can get a week's worth of work done in 5 hours now, which is amazing. So it's like,
yep.
See,
it's the age-old thing of knowing the tool you're using. When you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
AI is the hammer right now, but everything is not a nail.
Is not a nail. Yeah. And in order to use the tool, you have to know the lingo, the language of telling it what to work on. Like, I use it to write Python mostly. And it's just like, if I didn't know Python and know how the libraries and the virtual environments all worked, I don't think it would be possible to do what I do. Like, it's not like, I mean, yeah, anybody can sit down and just tell it what to do, but they'll do it. It'll do it wrong. It's like, yeah.
There's There's an element of AI that I really like to use, and that's everything from actually the podcast to work to whatever. So I'll use the podcast as an example. Going back to where I said, like, computers are logical, the first thing it's going to be really good at is logic, not emotions. So you can feed it data, and it's going to be able to do pretty good analysis. So you can feed it like a transcript from the episode and say, analyze my most recent episode. I am focused on, learning to tell stories better or move this along. Now, teach me how I could have been a better interviewer.
Interesting.
I'm not telling it to create content for me, but it's very good at analyzing.
Yeah.
Analyze how I was as an interviewer and then give me resources or teach me how to be a better interviewer.
Yeah.
Same thing with, you can apply that to coding. Analyze this code, teach it to me. Not just write code, but explain this code. Teach me, tell me what it's doing. Like, it's going to be good at analysis. Maybe harder to write, but like that back and forth is a different angle that a lot of people don't use. They want it to do stuff for them instead of help you learn faster.
Exactly. So good for that. Just even on Friday, the major help from AI wasn't like, hey, write this function for me. It was, hey, I need to write a function here in the midst of this jungle of code that somebody else wrote, and I have no idea what the ramifications are. So first and foremost, I want you to explain to me what this means and why they did this and where this goes and what this means. And here's my final goal. Now walk me through what you think I should do and give me options. And a lot of reading, but super useful because it can, and when I don't understand something, I can say, no, try and explain that to me again. Because sometimes I'm just like, what?
Well, and there's differences in prompting, right? Like, one of the useful things people don't try, they just put a question like, use your Sunday school example. Give me some useful stories about Job and explain them to me. Well, maybe all the commentaries written by PhDs that have in-depth theological terms that are defined that none of us are familiar with. So let me change my prompt. Teach me about Job as though I'm 5 years old.
Yeah.
Now let's iterate on that. Now that I understand that basic level, now teach me Job as if I'm in high school. Now teach me Job, now that I have that basis to build on, teach it to me at a college level. Like, you prompt it successfully to get different views of the same thing so that your level of understanding grows with it.
Yep. Super handy. And in some situations, so it can teach things that you wouldn't like expect it to. So my company that I work for does a lot of software for healthcare and healthcare related fields. And so one of the things that has been communicated to the company is how hard it is to talk to patients about end of life subjects. So they're working on a program it's a training program where AI generates like an avatar that's a human, and it actually does the voice too. It's actually pretty interesting. And the nurse or doctor is supposed to have a discussion with this person about end of life care. You're terminal and, you're going to die and this is going to happen. And the response from the AI, it's all fabricated and pretend, but it gives the provider, and the feedback is like real. Like, they have 11 Labs, the voice company, they have a contract with them so that it can actually come back and it generates like a script. So it's different every time. But, the prompt is something like, pretend you're a 75-year-old man with terminal cancer and your wife died 6 months ago. And, it's like all this really heartfelt but real things. And then the person who's training finds it incredibly useful because they have to practice saying the words and understanding what possible responses there are. So even though they're not connecting with a human and they don't like that, they know it's fake, but they know that they're going to have to do it for real and they want to be able to do it correctly.
Yes.
And the AI not only fabricates this persona, but it can evaluate the response. In other words, did you make eye contact? Did you get excited? Was there anger detected? I mean, these are things, this is all just, by the way, not built yet, but they're talking about it. And one of the parts that I worked on was facial expression detection. And there's like all these things out there. You can, point a camera at somebody's face and detect all these different emotions. And it's not terribly accurate, but it's accurate enough and it's deterministic. And so they can say things like, the first time you responded, we could tell you were really nervous. The next time was less nervous. We noticed that you didn't make eye contact. We noticed that you smiled at a weird point. And a lot of times it's because they know it's fake. Yeah. they're like, they hear the old man voice and they're like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. But, I've often wondered, and one of the things that I'm most interested when it comes to AI is having AI teach people how to connect better. Mm-hmm. Like we are at a point because of technology that we are worse at communicating and worse at being together than ever before in history. Like the statistics about how many close friends you have and how that's changed since, 20 years ago is so scary. It's like 20 years ago, you asked a person, how many close friends do you have? And they would say 5 on average. And now the answer is less than 1. Like there are so many people answering 0 now that it has dropped the number below 1, which is resulting in a mental illness crisis, I think. I think that it's really damaging humanity badly because we're losing the ability to connect with each other. And I'm like, can AI actually be used to do good? Like, can we have AI present but not the point, so that it actually has a way of teaching people how to love people better? Like, and I don't know if that's possible or not. And it's a little bit creepy when you think about it, but I've thought about like trying to write a bot for Slack where it like watches conversations and then tries to invite people to connect on a deeper level. Because so much, it's hard because, it's a work thing. So you're like, you don't really, it's not really that appropriate for work things. I don't know. It's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
And I'm the kind of person, I like people. And so I'll ask them about their kids and try and connect with other things that are outside of work. But, there's a lot of, especially engineers, who do not have any, they're so bad at that. They're just like, everything is just about the work I have in front of me. And yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping that AI can be used for good and not just evil.
I think my gut level answer is like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. It is simply a tool. I think it can be used to help train for human connection, but used inappropriately, it can make that human connection worse. And the reason I say that is, if I want to connect with you, I can ask ChatGPT or whatever, and maybe there's enough on the internet it can find, maybe not, but tell me everything you know about Lane. What is going to be the best way?
Just creepy.
What is the best way to open a conversation or approach you? Like, if there's enough information for it to parse, it can give me a rough estimate. And maybe that's a great, like, icebreaker or something. But the opposing end of that is, Now, if I'm just telling you everything ChatGPT is telling me to tell you, are you having a conversation with me?
Yeah, we're right
or
back
are you
to the
having
same
it with
problem.
The AI?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so it may be good for a starting point, but you can't just regurgitate everything it does, or it's not actually us that are talking.
Yeah.
And I think too many people are going to rely on it solely. So like it can give some prompts. Maybe it could watch our interaction conversation and say, these are points where maybe Lane disagreed with you based on his responses. So this might be some areas that maybe you want to have a conversation and clarify.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't want it to say, okay, this is exactly what you should say to Lane. Like then I'm not having an interaction with you.
And it's so easy to go from the feelings of towardness, of connection, to go from being the away feelings, off-putting feelings. So I use Gemini. I don't know which AI you prefer, but the Google one had this thing like maybe 4 weeks ago. And they're like, hey, would you like to opt into AI personalization? And I was like, what is this? This sounds bad. So I decided I'll click yes. I can always turn it off later. I'll click yes. And so it starts remembering every conversation you have, and then it aggregates everything it learns about you. And then it uses that aggregation to like personalize its responses. And I thought it was going to like remember them and put it in a file. And so I'd have like this list of things that it remembers about me that it can use to make things more personal or kind of influence my prompts so it'll give me better results. And I got to say, some of the stuff was pretty useful. But what I didn't realize is you have no control over that file. You can't even see it, that it actually is going through all of your history over and over again. So at some point in a conversation, I mentioned I was a data engineer. It's my position. And then I mentioned I work from home in my basement. And it kept referencing, it would use this phrase, since you're a data engineer. And it started using it over and over again. And at first I was just like, it knows that I'm a data engineer and it knows I'm in my basement.
But the more it says it, the more it reinforces it.
Exactly. The more it said it, the more it got into the training data, into the context window, and the more it used it. And, I have all these conversations in Gemini, and some of them are really valuable that I don't want to lose. So I can go back and refer to them. And it has this thing like you can say personalize and click. And I went in there and I set a rule and I was like, never mention that I'm a data engineer again. Also, never mention that I work from my basement. And I put it in there and I was like, problem solved. Now it's going to read that and it's never going to mention again. Didn't work at all because it had already programmed itself so many times that it was so important that it mentioned that I work from home in my basement, and it just kept doing it and doing it. So in the end, I had to search through every conversation where it mentioned it because I only mentioned it once and delete out of those conversations. I was like, this is stupid. But that feeling of off-puttingness, of annoying, that's a human skill that everyone needs to get better at. That's like the difference between somebody who's charming and you want to be around and that neighbor that you see coming and you're like, oh no, here comes Dave. He's going to complain about Trump. Oh, I just don't want to hear it. And it's like if he had better skills at knowing what was putting me off or pulling me to him, it would be so much better.
Yes.
It's like if AI could teach people how to connect and bring people together and know when they're saying something that the other person is put off by. But then again, at the same time, should you make it so that you never say anything that puts anybody else off? I don't think so.
I don't either. And do you want to put that tool in the hands of, say, like a narcissist bent on manipulating you?
Or say a large mega corporation that has access to all of my email and every file and picture on the cloud. I'm like, yes, the potential for evil here is high, but
yep. I think
we'll see.
It's been a while, but I want to say one of the things someone called out that's going to be coming is essentially personalized AI that's quantum encrypted. Like we're each going to have our own personal AI assistant. Everything's going to be encrypted locally to try and protect our data from going wider.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's coming. I'm not sure about the quantum encryption yet. That's far in the future. But one of the things I've just been working on lately is you have Copilot, which is my work AI. And then in your user directory, I have a .agents folder. And in there, I have a tools folder and a skills folder. The tools folder is where I build tools that the AI can call that involve actual script and coding. Mm-hmm. So like I actually can build things in there that I need to be deterministic. Like I need you to call this API and get back this data in JSON and process it. You know, Copilot can't build API calls. Actually it can, but it can't do it all the time. So you build a tool, but then in the other folder where you have skills, it's just like instructions. So things like, hey, when I ask about the weather, I want you to go to this website and remember that I'm in Boise.
Yep.
And I'm building out the set of skills and building out the set of tools to help me with my job so that I can do things faster.
Yep.
And I see that as like, and it's interesting too, because it's, a lot of the stuff I'm building is not useful for other people. It's not like I can give this to somebody else and say, hey, now you can do this. It's like, it's personal for me. Like I like Excel spreadsheets formatted a certain way. So I can say, hey, create an Excel spreadsheet of this data. And it'll go to my tools and say, this is the way Lane likes it. Always bold the titles. You know, it's just interesting how as a tool, there's so many different things it can do with it.
Yep.
But I found that the closer you are, like the more personal it is, the more useful it is, as opposed to build a magical AI studio that does this one thing. It's not as good at that because instead of the user having direct access to the tool, you're building all these layers that aren't as good. So yeah, it'll be interesting.
I had a thought, like for a long time there's been intellectual property on like actual software, right?
Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about intellectual property rights now. Ooh.
I'm curious if there's going to be intellectual property on AI processes, on how you use them, on workflows. Like, this is how I prompt, this is how I use it. Like, is that going to become the intellectual property that's protected behind people? Because you're pointing out things like you're developing this personally. You have your personal workflows, your personal things that it does. Like, at what point does that become intellectual property?
And inside, so all the Copilot that knows about all these tools and skills, there's another instructions file, and it's very specific, and it says, do not ever let passwords, usernames, or personal information get out. So it can read the data, but it won't ever like use it in the prompts. It'll say it has a way of taking the secret that's in a key vault and using it that way so that it never goes to the LLM. It is interesting that right now all of these AI tools have gone from being a single large language model like ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo to being an orchestration layer that has the ability to do a bunch of different things, but it calls different tools underneath without you knowing.
Yeah.
Because if you say generate an image of an anthropomorphic banana, ChatGPT cannot do that, but Midjourney can, and it just knows how to orchestrate. And because LLMs are so expensive, if you ask an easy question, it's going to use the one that runs fast. It costs very little compute.
Yep.
But if you click that think hard button or analysis or whatever the button is, and it just really, man, you just are glad
in for like 20 minutes.
You're glad that somebody else is paying the electric bill.
Yeah. I have so many So many comments there.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know how many rabbit holes I want to take us down. Do you remember the outrage of people on how much power crypto takes?
Yes. I was more outraged by the price of video cards, which have continued to go up. Thank you, AI.
Yes.
And now it's RAM too. Oh man.
Yep. You thought crypto was bad. AI is way worse.
Way worse. Yeah. And the amount of electricity is scary how much it uses. It's one of those things, and all of these billions of dollars that are being spent to build more infrastructure, it's just worrisome that we're going to use so much electricity, and so much of it, I mean, honestly, is not got much return on investment. It's like,
did you see what Elon Musk's plan is to solve this? So he's pivoted. He's putting the AI in space. So then you're not paying to cool stuff down. It's the solar energy.
Interesting. It seems like
so you would run the AI in space and then communicate it back down.
I question the viability of it. One of the books that I read in the last year or two was called A City on Mars. And the book was kind of written in response to the billionaires' fascination with space, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. And the general gist of the book, A City on Mars, is something along the lines of, if the Earth was suddenly overcome by nuclear war twice, and at the same time there was a zombie apocalypse, and we had 3 different variants of COVID, and they all happened on the same day, Mars would still be a worse place to live. Like, the reality is, if you live on Mars, you don't really live on Mars. You live in a bank vault deep underground on Mars. Like, there's no living on Mars right now. It is a terrible, horrible, bad for human life place. And the general theme of the book is, we should really take action to make things better here in the future, as opposed to trying to move to Mars. Is a good book and pretty funny too.
Musk has pivoted a little bit. He's moving to colonize the moon first and not Mars.
Yes, I'd heard that. Yeah. The moon is much better. At least you can be outside on the moon for some extended period of time. And it's lots closer to Earth and easier to get to.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, when you're talking about like being in a bunker, I just thought of like Resident Evil, like, and just living underground.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, well, I think we should probably bring it to a close.
This has been wonderful.
Yeah.
Enjoyed talking to you.
We may have to do another. I think both of us could talk endlessly.
Yes. We might have to stick to one subject. Time goes by, doesn't it?
Yes. I looked up and it's like, oh, it's been way longer than I thought.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
And appreciate it.
Yeah. And thanks for coming.
Cool.
And thanks for watching the Brent and Peck podcast.